This is Here in My Time, and I am so thankful and excited you've tuned in to this very first season of my brand new podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Hunt, and I am so honored to say that this first season of 16 episodes, hour-long weekly segments is actually sponsored by one of my favorite stores in downtown Huntington, Indiana. Can you tell the excitement in my voice? That's right, you've guessed it, Turn the Page Books and Music Store. Rex is the owner of this fine establishment. This is the place to go if you are looking for your next read or to add to your vinyl collection. It is jam-packed full of used books, everything from fiction to nonfiction, and of course a huge variety of records from rock and roll to Taylor Swift. And let me tell you, Rex is the perfect owner because he is a music library. If you need help picking out your first record or maybe adding to your collection, this is the man for you. Whenever you walk in the door, music is playing constantly. You got perfect lighting, you've got the wooden floors. It's the perfect vibe to enjoy your day in. So make sure you stop in and visit, and also follow him on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much, Rex, for your support. It means the world to me. Now on to the episode. This is Here in My Time, the podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between generations. I'm your host, Lauren Hunt, a local personal journalist, photographer, documentarian, and a lover of people and their stories, located here in Wabash, Indiana. Today, I am documenting the life of Cathy Gohmann, and I'm so thankful that you said yes, so thank you for being here.
I'm glad to do it.
So what I like to do is start off talking a little bit about my guests. Usually we come in with a little bit of an idea of what I would love to kind of steer my guests to, but I always love to talk about their life and kind of just their experience in life. So tell me a little bit about where you were born, when you were born, and your family dynamic.
I was born in 1959, so the little last echo of the baby boomers, because I literally December, so 2 weeks later, I would not have been in that category. I would have been in the next one. And I read an article that said people my age are what they call transitional generations because I was not affected by the major events. I was too young of the baby boomer. Mm-hmm. But yet they affected me because they affected life later. Mm-hmm. So, I still remember when you had a landline telephone. Mm-hmm. And I remember going up to my room and listening to 45 records. And so, there's that older type generation. Mm-hmm. But I've also seen all this technology and that dynamic's changing. Mm. So an interesting transition in time period. I was a child during the Vietnam era.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But didn't realize the impact because I was so young and used to news was at 6 at night and 11 at night. Mm-hmm. And they didn't post anything that was war or violence until 11 because kids would be in bed.
Oh.
And so I was not exposed to any of that as a child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I guess, yeah, because I think about stuff like 9/11 in my life. I was way too young to even understand the impact until later. And now I understand the impact, but it didn't really sit with me like the people that lived and was aware of what was really going on around them. Wow.
I think sometimes you don't realize the impact of history until you're older.
Yeah.
That looking back.
Yeah. And I bet it still had an impact on you, just not, I guess, I don't know.
Like I had an uncle at Christmas. He was in town and he was on crutches. Didn't realize till I was much younger that he was home and on crutches because he had been injured at Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
But no idea, because we were young and they didn't talk about it.
I find that interesting. I love that because when I talk to a lot of people, a lot of my friends are older than me, and that's where I'm the most comfortable with conversation. And a lot of my friends are in their 80s, and they talk about certain events, and even they've lived through a lot of events, and a lot of things seem to happen clustered.
Yeah.
in their life, and they talk about the influence in it. And I guess the only thing that I think about that I'm as of right now, going to be able to really tell my children the impact of it is COVID. Like right now, that's what I've lived through and really understood the impact of it.
Right.
But there's a lot going on. And that's not the point of that part.
I mean, it is an impact. It's going to be something that later on kids read about in a history book.
Yeah.
And they're going to do that same. This is so boring because it's just history to them. It's not a major impact event.
That's crazy. So what was your family dynamic like growing up?
My dad worked at a factory, woodworking factory, Kimball Office Furniture,
Mhm.
and they had a branch in southern Indiana. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was probably 15 or 16. So, that was the dynamic growing up. I have 3 siblings, and I'm the oldest, which, of course, they joke around all the time that I was the practice, and then they
Yeah.
perfected. It's a good, close family, and a lot of joking around and teasing with each other.
Was there, growing up, what was you as a little girl dreaming about?
Gosh, when you're young, you're just experiencing everything. And then really by 10th grade in high school, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't know exactly what area that was more fine-tuned in college, because back then you had to go to college if you were going to teach. It wasn't an option. But I'm the first of 3 people in my generation who have any college.
Oh, really?
In fact, I was a junior varsity volleyball player on the first year that they started girls' sports at my high school.
And what high school would that have been?
Borden High School.
Okay.
And, it's a town. My mom got excited and called me long distance when they got pizza delivery. It was a small town. Within 20 minutes, you could be in downtown Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
So it was kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
There was a dairy barn behind our house that a neighbor owned. So we had that very country atmosphere.
Yeah.
You knew everybody up and down the town. And we rode our bicycles all over the place. You know that where they say you got to be home by supper?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were all over the town on our bikes. And but when I started dating my husband now, he would often pick me up and we'd go to movies in Louisville.
Oh, wow.
Or, go out to eat in Louisville. So you kind of had the city and the country,
Yeah.
depending on where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. I think it's funny because growing up, we always would go to my mamaw and papa's in town. And on my mom's side, during the summer, we would kind of rotate between both sides of grandparents. We'd go out to my dad's side on sometimes, and then go out to my mom's side on another time. And they lived in town, so we were able to ride our bikes everywhere.
Yeah.
And we would ride them and go everywhere in the neighborhood. It was right close to the fire station now, where it's at, close to Southside area. And we would always go, and there would be like a creek and stuff, and we would make dams and all the stuff. But those were like the best memories.
We would get crawdads out of the creek and put them in the jars. It's like, never thought about the impact of whether we should be digging out crawdads, but we did.
I mean, hey, why not?
Yeah.
They're an interesting character. Like, the whole idea of them, I always call them the southern version of a lobster. It's just funny to me. They're just funny looking.
Well, and my dad and my uncles had a tradition of hunting. My dad was a gunsmith. And
wow.
We had a nephew who was deaf, and some of the uncles and my dad decided they were going to take him out when he was a teenager for his first hunting experience, which, of course, when you have someone who's deaf with you, you have to be, really cautious, but all the uncles were protecting him. And he came back and he was so excited, and he told us that he had shot a baby squirrel. And after he walked out, my dad looked at me and he goes, he shot a chipmunk. But with the coloring and everything, he thought it was a baby squirrel.
I love that.
So, that's just that very close family.
That's awesome. That's how my family is we're very close. It's something that we should hold dear very much. I had a few guests on before you by the time this will be airing. And they talked about the idea, you talked about how women's sports were just getting started and all this, it's changed so much. And I asked them the same question, and there's so many opportunities for us now. And I'm not even talking just about women. I'm just talking about in general. My generation has so much opportunities now.
See, and I grew up with the idea of that glass ceiling that
Uh-huh.
you hear about. And pretty much the two top professions for women when I was graduating high school was nurse or teacher. And there were some women just starting to be like administrative assistants and things. I mean, it affected me. I could not get a credit card or credit in my own name without having a male relative sign for me.
Really?
Like when I went to buy my first car,
Uh-huh.
my dad had to sign all the paperwork because I was female.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I remember the salesman. Now, my dad was really good about acknowledging that I had a job and was working, but the salesperson was talking to Dad, and Dad looked at him and said, "Talk to her. It's her car. She's buying it to go back and forth to college." And he looked at me and he said, "I can get it in blue, and it has a makeup mirror."
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, and that was
Ooh.
experiences growing up in that time period.
Goodness gracious.
Well, because I graduated college, I graduated high school and then, into college in the 80s. In the 70s, when I was in those teenage years, we still were dealing with women's lib. I mean, that was civil rights and women's lib were still an impact because it was the sick.
That's what they said a lot too. They were talking about how they had like 3 options, but their dad was like, these are your options.
Yeah.
They were saying, you're either going to be a teacher or a secretary or a nurse, and
That was pretty much society was saying those are your options.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my friends who talks about that, she did the same as she became a teacher, but she fell in love with teaching. But it was also because she couldn't be a farmer. They weren't allowed to be a farmer. Her dad didn't think that she should be a farmer or could be a farmer. Plus, it would have been very difficult for her to be a farmer, which I find that very fascinating, this whole timeline.
My dad was from Appalachian Mountain area. When my cousin Roseanne and I got our master's degree in education, our families did a combined open house, cake punch, have the family. And I had an uncle and he told me, he goes, "I'm not trying to put you down or anything." He said, "I'm really curious." He said, "Why do you girls need so much education? You have good men with good jobs."
Wow.
And he prefaced, he was just curious why we would do that.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a concept of
Right.
why we would go on like that.
Goodness gracious. I read a book once, and because you were an English teacher for so long, and I was telling you before this that I can't wait to talk about literature and talk
Yeah.
about your teaching and stuff. I read a book once, and it was talking about the firsthand accounts of women pioneers getting land when they first moved out west.
Oh, yeah. Because for a period of time, women couldn't own land.
No. And and I read about this account of about a woman who literally tracked by herself out west, and they had to stake hold for so long before the land could be theirs.
Right.
And there was so much upheaval that she had come and she was trying to own this land, and it was like this whole thing where everybody was upset, but she had earned it rightfully so because she stayed on the land for so long, and she was able to create a crop and create even on the toughest of times. I don't know. What do you think it is about the grit in some of women and in men? I don't ever want to single out either one, but it is part of history. What do you think it is about the grit in women?
I had some people that told me the only difference between being stubborn and being determined is who's looking at it and making the call. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's just pure stubbornness that, if you can't, but that's what will lead you to a better life, especially for your children, stubborn your way through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's I There's so much I would love to discuss about that. But I probably should cut it off there because I could probably take us through so many rabbit holes on that. But
Well, like we talked about earlier, I think it just depends on your passions, what you want to achieve. And not everybody's path is the same,
right.
but we all have areas we want to achieve.
So one of the questions I asked them to kind of tie a bow on that little nook of the topic is I asked them what their thoughts are about the fact that we have so much offered to our generation now that do you think there is such thing as too much of a good thing?
No, I think choices are wonderful, which I also firmly believe education gives you those choices.
Mm.
And the more, and I'm not talking like college or
Mhm.
formal, but the more you learn, the more you read, the more you know, the more choices you have.
Mm. I do find that when I talk to, like, my grandmother and I ask her, "Well, why didn't you just do this?" or "Why didn't you
Yeah.
just do that?" She goes, "Well, I didn't know we could, and you didn't chance it."
Well, and I told the academic honors group, who were having their first opportunity with a college level course. I said, you can't know what you don't know. You have to realize you don't know something before you can actually take the next step. There has to be a realization.
Yeah. What was your realization of knowing you wanted to be a teacher? Because 'Cause you're definitely in teaching mode right now, just the
No,
way in the best way, like,
I'm
you
always in teaching
and I
mode.
love it, and I miss it, so
Yeah.
for the listeners that don't know, she was my English teacher in high school, and she's fabulous. So, but what was that first little, I guess, realization like, "Oh, I really love to do this?"
I think it started with my love of reading.
Mhm.
'Cause, my gosh, in 5th grade, I did book reports on 105
Oh
books.
my gosh.
I mean, and my mom encouraged us to read. We actually had library cards from 3 different towns. Every place she went to run errands, we'd end up with a library card, and she would have us go get books, and then we would be in the car reading while she ran into the grocery store or went and got prescriptions or
Mhm.
whatever she needed, and we were just in the back of the station wagon reading, and so it was always encouraged and really not censored. If mom thought maybe it was controversial material, she would get 2 copies and she would read it with
First,
us.
or with you.
Like, she never told me not to read it. She would read it at the same time, and then we'd discuss it.
Wow.
Like, I wanted to go this'll show my age too. There was this new hot movie coming out called The Exorcist, and I wanted to see the movie,
Yeah.
and she said, "I don't think you need to see the movie. Why don't you read the book?" Now, you and I know there's a lot more in a book than there is in the movie,
Yes.
but same thing, she read it at the same time, and then every night we talked about what we had read and, the idea of fiction and how does that go with our religious beliefs.
Mhm.
And so, I was never told, "No, you can't read that."
Wow.
Yeah.
Why do you think your mom was like that in so in that way?
A practical part, she had 4 kids, and if we
Yeah.
were reading in the back of the station wagon, we weren't
Yeah.
causing trouble or fighting, because kids will be kids. And part of it, I think, because she saw, that opportunities that were coming,
Yeah.
and so she just always encouraged us to read.
Wow. Was she I mean, you talk about her reading along with you, but do you remember her just reading on her own?
Oh,
Was that
yeah.
something she just
Oh,
loved to
yeah.
do?
All the time.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
remember, no, I was in high school, senior, the year of the big blizzard in
Mhm,
Indiana
mhm,
and 78,
mhm.
and, I actually missed 30 days of my senior year because of snow and ice, and we couldn't get out, and back then, we didn't make up snow days.
Oh,
That
wow.
rule wasn't in place yet. I was so bored because
Really?
you could not even go out your front door
Yeah.
at times. So my dad had a whole set of Zane Grey Westerns. I mean, you bought them, and they came so many times in the mail, and he had this whole set, and I ran out of things to read, and I read all of those Zane Grey Westerns because I didn't know what else to do with myself. It was like the snow was really too big to even get out there and shovel.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I always hear the stories about that, and I'm like, "If I missed 30 days of school" at one point in time, it would have stressed me out
Yeah.
really much, but that's only because I knew how much work was involved with school, but also, I would have been just fine to just
Yeah.
not do
When
anything.
we showed up at school, they'd give us whole packets in case we didn't come back the next week.
Oh, wow.
So
Completely
when they'd
different.
clear it out, because then, of course, after you had the blowing and the drifting, and
Yeah.
as much as you like photography, you should look at some of the pictures. It's amazing
Really?
on how much snow we had.
Oh my goodness. I think I've seen photos, but I'll have to really go and, like, look through some of them.
And of course, those black and white, those journalism photos are amazing.
Gosh, I bet they are.
I think if I remember, there was somebody showed me a photo they had taken because they had to get up to the school,
Yeah.
and there was a snowdrift over the hood of the school bus.
Oh my
I
god.
mean, it was just amazing. People that would be in their second story and open a window, and the snowdrift was right there.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh. So talk to me a little bit about getting into teaching and what that looked like for you, your first day in your first
Well,
classroom, all the things.
since I was from a family that didn't have a lot of college, of course, it was overwhelming. You're walking into this college class and have no idea what it's about. And back then, majoring in education was very different. And we had so many people going into education in Southern Indiana that I was afraid I wouldn't be able to find a teaching job. And so I actually got a bachelor's degree in English and a bachelor's degree in education at the same time. So it's 3 credit hours per English
Mhm.
class back then. To be a teacher of English, you had to have 24 credit hours in English. I came out with 60 because of the degree in English.
Oh my goodness.
So, I've never regretted that because it gave me a really good background in the material and the literature
Mhm.
going in. But I really thought if I couldn't find a teaching job, that I would go into marketing or advertisement.
Oh, really?
I really considered that. Well, words,
Yeah. Yeah.
words.
Wordsmiths. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
And I had that as kind of a back in my mind. And then my husband and I, we got married.
Mm.
After about a year or so, he came home from work and he said, I've had a job offer in a place called Wabash, Indiana. And my first question was, where is Wabash? Because we didn't know. Got out a map and looked, and he came up summer of '88 and interviewed, and we ended up moving up here. It's been a good move. I love the community.
Yeah. Talk to me about your first day after you've got the job. Was it a hard position
I
to
got the
get?
job the day before the teacher meeting, and then the next day I was going to have students. And so I didn't even know the staff.
Really?
And, I met them one day and then started working with them the next day.
Now, was it always at Southwood?
Yeah. From
Always?
up here,
Your
yes.
whole career?
Yeah. I was
Wow.
part-time for a while. And it was so funny because I was from that Louisville, Kentucky area.
Yeah.
And my dad was from Virginia. So I would finish my discussion, and I taught seniors mainly, high school. And I would finish my discussion and I'd say, now, are there any questions? And every class, someone raised their hand and said, where are you from?
A
Because of that Southern
little bit of
accent.
an accent, yeah.
And it was so funny because they were guessing like deep South.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been to
Yes.
Kentucky,
Yeah.
it's definitely there. And then you add Virginia on top of it. But it was after I'd been here for a while, my dad actually told me that I was speaking much more cityfied than I used to
Yeah.
because, Virginia. And then when my daughter was in a play when she was in school, she was supposed to do an accent and she was having trouble with it. And one of the older students said, just sound like your mom when she's mad.
Exactly.
It was like, I guess it comes back.
It does. It definitely comes back. It's funny because I listen to all my family. I'm like, "Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yep." I mean, I can hear it day to day, but there's times when I'm like, "Oh, you're fiery today." You're
It's like,
fi
it's there.
So, did you always know you wanted to teach high school or
Oh, always high school.
why high school?
Well, I did some substitute teaching. And like when I was doing my college work, I would try to get my college classes 2 days a week for the full day. And then I would sub the
Uh-huh.
other to get my name out to learn. And I just always clicked more with the high school students.
Oh, yeah. You definitely do. What I always remember of you
Yeah.
teaching, you just naturally have
No,
that.
I love the junior high. Don't
Mhm.
get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But that's a different level of energy than the high school.
Right, right. Ashley's a teacher. My sister's a teacher for the listeners, and she teaches young kids. And there's a whole different patience when it comes
Yes.
to that. But also, like, I feel like there's challenges in both areas. We talked a little bit before we actually started recording But we talked a little bit about this line that you have a heart for your students, that you want to fix problems and you want to help them. Is there a line that you can't cross that you kept in your heart to just almost to protect you, but also protect the student?
Well, I think more there's a line that, and I think rightly so, that there's got to be a line between a teacher and a student.
Right.
I mean, I knew, the students knew we weren't going to be friends.
Right.
And I wasn't going to hang out with them on the weekend
Right.
while they were in my class. Now, I do have some ex-students who become very dear friends, but not till after we were past that
Right.
dynamic of student and
Professionalism.
teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. That would be the line.
Mm.
You know, you've got to remain a professional. You should.
You should. Yes. Well, like for me, and I know for you, I'm sure, because we talked a little bit about it, but I guess the professionalism, but what is the professionalism line when it comes to something's really going on within your student? And how did you navigate some of that as a teacher?
Well,
Because
part of it, remember, I'm teaching high school,
right.
and it's pretty much the line is, what do they feel comfortable sharing with me? I didn't go digging for it, but if they opened up and shared something, then I'm trying to protect them and make sure that it was right to privacy and all of that. And getting them maybe to the counselor or someone who had more experience than I did, but still being open. They knew I was there. And they also, whether you get a lot of criticism about it or not, they knew I was consistent.
Ooh, that's a good word.
Like if I had the rule, they knew if they broke the rule, there were going to be consequences.
Right.
If it was a school rule, because I was a professional and that's my job, I was going to enforce the school rule.
I remember a lot because I always navigated towards teachers that were more strict in a sense because I knew the line. Like I just knew the line and I liked them. That's not the right
Yes,
term, but I
I understand.
I got along with them a whole lot better in my eyes.
You knew what was coming and what the expectations were.
Right. But I always liked that because I knew but I knew their heart. It wasn't a strictness to just be.
And also, too, I think because teachers see the bigger picture, there are some students who could not rely on any consistency in their home life, and they needed to know that you were going to be consistent.
Be there.
And sometimes they would purposely break a rule just to make sure she's really going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that there's probably a lot of moments. I was talking to one of the prior interview was saying how she taught a group of students that were very completely different culture from her. And but it was very well known. It was just how it was at this particular school but it was outside the school. But I don't know, their life was very rambunctious and very family business, you might say. Yeah. So like it was that really hard line to kind of figure out how do you encourage students like that to keep
sometimes
going.
you're going to, let's be honest, sometimes you're going to blow it because we're human and you make the wrong call. And they usually at high school will let you know you made the wrong call.
Right.
And it's like, sorry.
Yeah. So how, for maybe there's somebody listening, a young student wanting to become a teacher like you, how do you structure your class? And how do you, I guess you don't have to get into specifics, bullet point things, but
there's the job versus personalities in your classroom. So the job, you're going to have state and county requirements that you have to. You just have to. That's your teaching license, that's your job. And then above and beyond that, every class has a different personality. And sometimes you have to take a different approach depending on the nature of your class. Like there are some students I could laugh and joke around with and we could still get done what we needed to do. And there are students, they could tease me and I could tease them. I knew their family, I knew them. And then there are some classes that you can't.
Right.
And it has to be straight-laced. Here's our goal. Here's what we're going to accomplish. And I think judging that and classroom management, that's where experience comes in.
Just experience.
Yeah, I don't think it's that somebody's a good teacher or a bad teacher. I think it's a level of experience. And then it's like I always tell student teachers, It's like when you're a first-time driver, you're so focused on the wheel and the mechanics of the car that you're not really looking around as much. And then when you become experienced, you don't even think about it. You're automatically checking the rearview mirror and the side mirrors, and you know who's around you. And that's just experience.
I feel like if I had to actually teach a class or something like that, I feel like I'd have to really prep myself in preparation for
I think
things.
I did too.
Oh,
My
yeah.
first class, I came in, I was an older student teacher. I was 24 because of the 2 degrees. My first class were 18 and 19-year-olds.
Yes.
There was only 5 years difference between us. And I'm the authority in the classroom who's supposed to,
Yeah.
maintain discipline and control. And yeah, so I prepped a lot. And then the next year, I didn't have to prep as much. And then the next year, and after I had been doing it 15, 20 years, I had a parent one time and he said, I want you to copy your lesson plan book for me. And I said, it's not going to help you, but I'll be happy to do it. And he insisted. So I went to the copy machine and came back to parent teacher conference and it said, Monday, introduce Shakespeare. That was my lesson plan. But I had done it for 20 years. So I knew exactly what I was going to say and what I needed to cover.
Right.
And like Tuesday, it said, Act 1, Scene 1.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it because of that repetition and experience. But my first year, I probably would have had written down every single thing I needed to bring in the classroom and every question I was going to ask. But after a while, it goes with the flow.
Yeah. Did you notice, like, you're talking about each classroom had a different dynamic or different personality throughout the time that you taught? What did you notice something within the different generations?
A little bit. People want to say, oh, the younger generation, it's so much worse. No, I think they're so much more open and honest about what they're feeling.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
when I first started teaching, it was more behind your back. And now they'll just tell you. And in some ways, for me, I liked it better because then we could talk about it and we could deal with it.
Right.
And I didn't find out later that they were upset about something.
Right. Do you think having technology within the classroom, as much as it's a good thing, did you find it to be a hindrance in any way? As a learning curve, was there something that stood out to you when that kind of thing got introduced?
When we first got technology, I was going to all the training because they would have an age. So like some of us who were older and more experienced and some who were younger. So they would do a spread, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
People kept saying, the kids know technology. They know technology. You won't have to worry about it. Well, they know technology, but not productivity with technology. And that's where you have to guide them. Like if I ask them, hey, send a message to your friend, no problem. But if I said, I want you to edit these pictures and put them in a collage under a theme, now we have a problem. But
Right.
that's okay. And as they get older, they learn more and more of that.
Right. I guess you hit the nail on the head when you talked about productivity, because it is a different feature. When I talked to, like, my dad, and he's talking about how he would go to the library and get all the books for a paper or
Yeah.
to find research, I used to try to do that a lot in school because I wanted to be different. Half of that was I just wanted to be different.
Well, some people need to have something to touch and manipulate.
Right.
No, they need the note cards and they need the books.
Well, I feel like it's something different, kinda moving into literature here. I feel like it's so different to read something on a physical book than it is to read it on the computer. I'm not saying that it's not good or bad either way, but I'm more of a physical
Right.
there's something different when you read Shakespeare on a book.
I think it depends on learning style.
Yeah.
And that is where the degree in education and the master's in education is very helpful because you learn about different learning styles. So in my classroom, I would try to hit as many of those learning styles as I could in my lessons.
Right.
So I guess that goes back to how do you organize your lesson?
Yeah.
Well, if I have to teach, okay, this section of Shakespeare, then I had to think about, okay, what if somebody's a visual learner? What if they need to listen to it? What if they need to hands-on to do something with it? And I would try
Especially
to hit as many of those as I could.
right, especially Shakespeare. It's one of those things that you almost need all your senses to understand sometimes. For some people, it's
Over the years, it's amazing. The people who were raised with the King James version of the
Mhm.
Bible are able to understand Shakespeare easier than people who have had translations that are newer because Shakespeare was writing during the time of Queen Elizabeth and King James.
Right,
And so that was everyday language to them.
right. I feel like it's not as difficult. I guess we've had it so easy with a lot of our language now because it's just kind of all forefronted. Even just simple everyday writing that I read even, 20 years ago, reading a book that's 20 years old and reading a book now,
Yeah.
almost two different in a way, different languages. Not the way that, I guess there's more fodder to it at 20 years ago where it's more, flowered.
Well, as you have times where there is less and less technology to help people understand and
Mhm.
visualize, then people had to tie into that language and imagination more. So, I mean, it was a requirement if you were going to understand it at all.
Right,
You didn't have any technology to help you.
right.
And that's where I really like the blend.
Yes.
Like, I know kids get bored with it, but I think it's very valid to have the words in front of you on the computer and have the computer read it while you follow along
Oh, yeah.
because you're hitting more of those learning
Mhm.
styles. Now, if they just listen, then we've taken out the visual learner.
Right.
So I think, it's having it blended that has a better chance of getting to people and people's approach.
It is fascinating to think of the sociology of teaching because of what you really have to pay attention to and how to go about things.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize it, but when you get a degree in education, you take sociology and psychology classes too.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
I had to have educational psychology and, all of these theories and practices that
Mhm.
involved education and how people learn.
Oh, wow. That see, I love that kinda stuff. I get very nerdy about certain things, so, like, I love this topic.
If there's anybody that's nerdy, it's going to be an English teacher.
Well, good.
We do that.
Well, good, because I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about reading and literature a little bit more in depth on your everyday practice as just a person, as just somebody who loves to read. I have this when I first pick up books, and especially in high school, I remember not feeling like I had time to read, even though I was so busy with sports or whatever, and I was very active. So for me to sit down was totally two different things for me. But every time that I would be given a book assignment or anything like that, I instantly got sucked into the story. So I always have loved books. But after I graduated and my friend Karen, who's in her late 70s now, but she was the owner of a farm I worked at in high school, and she was the person that really introduced me to the idea that your life can look like what you want it to look like. You
Right.
can live your life the way that you want to live your life, okay? And what that meant for me was I saw her house and it was just stacks of books just everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was everything that she loves. And one of the traditions that we ended up having when we would, after work, I'd work for like 3 hours and then stay another 3 hours and just talk. And we would always end up telling stories or reading something that we have wrote. She's a really great writer that nobody would know because she doesn't publish, but she would read her work, but she gave me an opportunity to read what I was writing, which I thought was so cool. And I loved that aspect of the shared storytelling in that sense. But we would always get on subjects, everything from farming to, what was going on in the world. And she would go and pull a book off of her shelf and it would always relate to something that we were talking about and she would suggest it. Now, was there a book and she suggested a lot of books for me that I really fell in love with. Was there a book for you that really kind of, I don't know, made you think or made you change your life is a big big saying, but was there a book that you remember that really sticks with you?
There's so many of them because I think, what we talked about is I am a voracious reader.
Yeah.
So I remember a college professor, we were talking about fiction, and somebody said, well, fiction doesn't have a lot of depth to it.
Mm.
And he said, it's your job as a creative, imaginative person to find the depth and how
Oh,
it relates
yes.
to your life.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, I just finished Dan Brown's new book, The Secret of Secrets.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it.
And it has a lot about human consciousness and what happens after death.
Mhm.
Well, I've had a lot of deaths this last year in my family, and that resonated with me. So I really believe the right book comes to you at the right time.
Mhm.
And then a friend of mine from my book club suggested a book by Catherine May called Wintering.
Ooh.
And it's the idea, basically, the power of rest when you're going through difficult times.
Yes.
And so that's on my to be read list that's coming up
Ooh,
next.
that sounds like a really good book.
Oh, my to be read list, stack is always huge.
Yeah.
And it's got everything from nonfiction to science fiction, fantasy to romance to, just if the book catches my attention in some way, I'll end up buying it and going on the list.
Have you always been that way? I mean,
Yes.
like, for me, I always get stuck on one kind of book for a very long time, maybe, and for instance, I'm not a big romance person, like, I wouldn't just go out and find a romance book, but if the book has it, it doesn't bother me, but I have noticed I've stepped outside of, like, my comfort zone, you might say, on some of my literature, and I've learned a lot that there is so much depth when you really start to unfold the layers of each
Well,
book.
and I wish I remember where I heard it years ago, but I remember that there was something that I read that said, for fiction, you learn through your imagination
Yeah,
and what could be.
yeah,
And so I have always appreciated any kind of fiction because of that.
yeah.
I'll read a murder mystery one time, and then next thing, right now, I asked a friend who's very science and math what a fractal was
Mhm,
because I'm reading a nonfiction book that mentioned it.
mhm.
So it's just, I've always been open to learning new things.
Yeah,
And for me, reading and literature is that path
that
to
path.
learn new things.
Now, I know you've said before, we've talked before, but saying that you read a lot for more of a pleasure than you do for.
Now more than I did because
Mhm.
going through college and, of course, teaching, I had to read whatever was on the
Right.
curriculum and make sure that I remembered. Like, I've read Frankenstein multiple times
Yeah.
to remind myself of details before I would teach it again because every class and every group of people have a different personality.
Mhm,
And so they bring a little bit of a different spin.
mhm. Have you said you read, like, Frankenstein several times. Does anything new pop up as you read it? Something new that you find?
Yeah, it's like something I'll notice, or it'll relate to something in current events
Ooh, yeah.
or a scientific discovery.
Yeah.
And then you look at it, with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
So I think rereading a book, it has value too.
Yes, I think so too. There's several books on my shelf that after I get done reading a book, I always put like a little note card in that said what I was thinking about this book at the time. Now, of course, I know you don't dog ear and or destroy your books like I do. I don't say
Mm.
destroy, but I.
I annotate if I'm using it for college or for a educational purpose.
Mhm.
Like, I annotated my textbooks.
Mhm.
But or even when I was younger with my Bible when I was in church, if the
Mhm.
preacher made a really interesting comment about a verse, I would annotate over to the side. So, that's another reading skill too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I always like to do that. It makes me think of just like when I'm reading a passage, whether I'm things pop into my mind at certain times. When I was reading I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, I couldn't there was 1 or 2 sections that I actually annotated in, but I just love the book so much that to write everything that I could think about writing I just never did.
Well,
But
that's where if I'm in a situation like that, I tend to get a notebook next to me.
I definitely do.
And then I'll write in the notebook instead of in the book.
Yeah. I love that. So you're talking when you were talking about the books that you read when you were a teacher for classes, I was in the bookstore not too long ago, and I was thinking about I was trying to find something with Toni Morrison. That's kind of my next step. I was listening to her read one of her passages from, I don't remember what book, but I thought, gosh, it had such rhythm and poetry. And when it wasn't really a poet, or she is a poet, but when that was not the extent of her book. And I just love that. Whenever I find a writer that has this rhythm or poeticness to them.
Actually, it's called lyrical writing.
That makes
because
sense.
it's like the lyrics of a song, which relates to poetry.
Wow.
So they have a lyrical quality to the writing.
Oh, that's cool. I learned something new today. That's so cool. But I was in the bookstore and I was looking at, I get distracted. I just kind of go in and meander, which is usually.
Time disappears when I'm in a bookstore. I have no concept of how long I've been there.
And nobody comes with me because because they're just like, come on, you've been in this section for, I don't know, half an hour. I'm like, no, I haven't. I just got here. But I came across the table for banned books. What is your thoughts on the idea of banning books, if you would like to talk about that?
Well, now that I'm not a teacher, my personal opinion, I don't think any book should ever be banned. The only category on banned books that I've ever agreed with is getting the right book at the right age and maturity. And I would joke around when I would talk to the kids about banned books, in high school. And I'd say, you don't take Nightmare on Elm Street to the kindergarten class.
Right.
But it's okay for entertainment with a more mature audience if they enjoy that genre. And my mom pretty well led me into the idea that just because you read something doesn't mean you have to accept it.
Yeah.
That, you think about it and go, okay, this is fiction. Is there anything here that I agree with or not? And it's okay to agree without, or even disagree without saying nobody else can read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it surprised me on some of the books that they had banned because those were books that I had read at one point in time at, that grade level or whatever it might be. I think To Kill the Mockingbird was on there. I don't know if it's still on there now.
It is.
I can't remember exactly, but at least for the table, I could just remember certain.
I will say this about our Southwood School District, Wabash area. I can't, speak to the schools I'm not familiar with. But with MSD, they have always been very good about if a book is challenged, and that's the first step. A parent says, I don't think this book's appropriate. And then it's up to the teachers and the librarians to defend why they have that book. Well, personally, I think if you can't defend the book, then maybe they're right and it doesn't belong there because there's other literature that is really good. But if there is a good defense of that book, our school district in the area have been very good about recognizing the expertise of teachers and understanding that we're going to guide the students through that book. And, they have trusted us to be the experts in the field.
Right.
And I've always appreciated that for this area.
I think that's amazing. I don't think I ever was aware of it in high school as far as all the behind the scenes things that happens. I think I'm more of aware of it now just because I know that it's a thing and there's a lot going on and everything that's happening in the world.
Well, and we have for years. I mean, even when I started teaching, if a parent talks to a teacher about a book, we offer an alternative.
Yes.
I mean, and I think maybe some parents don't know that. That you, instead of saying, let's get rid of the book totally, asked if there's an alternative that has the same theme or, in a little bit different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I do find the conversations around books is the way you go in, your mindset going into reading a book, especially at a young age, or especially the potency of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you think, you know, say I picked up a book. One thing I like to do is read a book that I don't agree with and or don't fully understand, but I want to not be ignorant on a subject.
Well, and also I have, everybody that you meet has an influence on who you become and on your
Yes.
opinions.
Yes.
And there was a lady who we were having a discussion. It was religious nature at the time.
Mhm.
And it was not an angry discussion. It was just we were talking.
An actual conversation.
Yeah, we were talking about differences
Yes.
because I taught world religion.
Yes.
And so it was just a conversation. And I remember she said, and this stuck with me, if your beliefs are never challenged, how do you know that your faith is strong?
That's true.
And I thought, wow, I had not at that point in my life thought that way. So sometimes I think it's good for me personally
Mhm.
to get a book that I do not agree with
Mhm.
and to see that side because they usually have some valid points,
Mhm.
even though, I don't accept it as maybe my whole be all and end all.
Yes.
There are usually some really good ideas and points buried in there.
I've heard it said, chew the meat and spit out the bones. There's
Okay.
good to everything. I mean,
Yeah.
I know there's gonna be something about that as far as good to everything, but there are things you can learn in every situation that you're in and everything that you read or hear. We have so much noise happening to our generation, especially, trying to figure out what is true in the media and what is not in the
Well,
media.
I think it's interesting because my daughter is a counselor
Mhm.
in IU Bloomington, and she said some of the people that she's met on campus,
Mhm.
not clients, but some of the people she's met on campus is that 18, 20-year-olds, that college age group,
Mhm.
are starting to get traditional watches with
Yeah.
hands
Yes,
because they don't wanna be connected, they don't want that smartwatch.
for sure. For sure. I think I've seen my generation do that a lot, especially now there is always good to everything. Like I said, like there to a point, social media can be good to a point. This is a very media based project here, right?
Right.
But if at any time, if somebody can't handle noise, just turn it off.
I think it's interesting that e people who are younger
Mhm.
are starting to look for those quieter, gentler moments where they're
Yeah.
disconnected because they were so raised with it all the time.
Mhm.
You'd think, "Oh, that's just part of their life, they don't even think about it." But for them to choose to not
Yes.
have the smartwatch, I think that's amazing.
Right.
That shows a maturity, knowing what they need.
Well, you miss out on life when you have your head down constantly or your earbuds in. Even if it's good things, even if you're learning, even if whatever it might be, at some point you need to be able to have your own thoughts and your own, opinions on things because you can be full of them
Well, and
constantly.
sometimes when you're recording,
Mhm.
I don't care what age you are, you're so busy recording the moment that you're not
In it.
living the moment.
Ooh, yeah.
So, there has to be a balance.
Yeah,
I
I think
just think
so
that
too.
moderation, that balance in all things is good.
I think so too. How do you think our generation, with that kind of movement coming in, where we're slowing down, and it's not just like my generation, but younger and older too, because older generations have come, we're growing accustomed to everything, and so quickly, and we have to.
It
You can't even go to the store without worrying if you have credit card or cash. You have to choose the right lane, or there's a robot in Walmart now, like that,
yeah.
like the sweeper. I stood in front of it to see if it would run me over. It didn't. It had a "I'm still here."
Thank goodness.
Yeah. It had a camera, but I was just
Yeah.
so curious, and it was so funny to watch everybody's faces, like, turn and just watch it because we've read literature about this very thing that was
Oh, yeah.
written in like 1800s.
Well, one of the things about science fiction is I like, because I may not live to see it, but science fiction often predicts
yeah.
the future. And, like Star Trek, they had communicators. And who would have thought that we would have earbuds now that we could communicate without any kind of device in our hands?
It's
So,
crazy.
1984
Yeah.
predicted how much security cameras and how much we would be under video. Of course, he was off for a few years, but considering the fact he wrote it in 1940s, 50s,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a pretty good prediction
That's great.
of where we're going to go.
How do you think our generation is going to affect literature in 20,
I
30
don't know.
years?
And for me, that's what's so exciting, because it's wide open and all the possibilities are there.
Oh, man. Because I feel like we're gonna be more potent as we, continually kind of digress on everything that everything's being pushed on us. We're kinda like, "No, we kinda wanna go back." Um, I found a lot of my generation going back to reading the classics,
Yeah.
and they want to
Oh, the
seek out the
classics are
classics.
classic for a reason.
Yeah,
It speaks to human nature.
yeah.
Well, and like I had a class one time because I was quoting a part of Shakespeare,
Mhm.
and they said, "How can you do that?" And I said, "Well, I've taught it at that point for 25 years." I
Mhm.
said, "I better know some of these passages."
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, how are you not bored going over and over the same thing?" And I said, "Well, it's in your perspective." I said, "I'm not teaching Macbeth. I'm teaching you and using Macbeth as a tool."
Oh, wow.
So, you can teach for 35 plus years
Mhm.
as long as the focus is you're teaching the students in your class and it's fresh and new for them.
Yeah.
And then that keeps it a little more fresh and new for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that's so cool. I never would have thought of it as using the book more as a tool than as just a teaching moment as far as
Yeah.
just another assignment. I love that.
Well, and most of the state standards are skill based.
Mhm.
They don't say you have to teach Macbeth.
Mhm.
They say what skills you should be focusing on at that level.
Mhm.
And like they're tied together. So 11th grade was introduced that skill, maybe that's fairly new or that new term. And by 12th grade, it start using it and, fine tuning your understanding. So it's very tied in. It's very scaffold from the beginning all the way up to when you graduate high school. And sometimes it feels like it's the same skill, but it's at a different level. So you use a different level of literature, a different level of textbook to
Mhm.
bring out.
Mhm. I I I guess when you're in it, you don't really notice that sort
Well,
of thing.
no.
Of course not. But
Yeah.
I find it fascinating looking back because you do like a teacher has so much responsibility for someone's mind and also just like their spirit of how they see themselves and how they see the world and how they see their future.
Well, and you put that on top of the fact that teachers are people and
Yeah.
human, and sometimes we don't make the right call
Mhm.
because, well, we're people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I was trying to think as I was listening to you talk just about your relationship with your students and how you would teach them and use it as a tool. I've sat at the feet of a lot of people older than me, younger than me as well,
Yeah.
and there's so much you can learn from somebody by
Oh, yeah.
just
I've learned so much from students who've come into my classroom.
that's
I at one time said, "You guys keep me young," because that connection of what's going on in the thoughts, like I would be teaching a concept maybe with Macbeth, but they would ask a question. And like at one point they said, "Well, if there was a new movie, Mrs. Gohmann, who would you have play Macbeth?" And I'm going,
Mhm.
no one has ever asked me that question before. So, it just they bring in their personality and it's all good.
It's so cool, the experience. I've had a lot of teachers already on the
Mhm.
podcast, so it's so cool to see the heart that teachers really have. I've always connected to the teachers that were just enough strict, but also just
Right.
actually cared about their students. And not that I never had a teacher that didn't care about the student, but there's
Right.
some people that I connected more with.
Well, I think that's personalities too.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just a personality
Mhm.
that you're naturally going to be more open
Mhm.
because maybe the person said something. I got a student years ago. He walked into my class and he had on a rock and roll,
Mhm.
t-shirt with a band. And I said, "Oh, cool shirt. I really like their music." That child and I connected for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, you just never know what's going to cause the connection.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, because you say that you've been asked questions that you never thought you'd be asked before.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It is
It
great.
is
It's
great.
great.
I love it because, it kept me on my toes and it let me see that the student was thinking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, Shakespeare, for instance, there's a lot of questions that could go into Shakespeare on just a personal note if you read it.
Right.
And the more you understand it, the more the depth comes as you kind of like, "Oh, I wonder, oh, well, that relationship and this."
Better.
There is that rhythm to Shakespeare, and I still struggle with certain
Oh,
passages
I
or
think
certain.
everyone
I'm
does.
like, "I'm
We
not
don't
exactly sure what you mean."
we didn't live in that time period.
We're like,
But I've told students I listen to rap music, and there are sections I'm thinking, "I don't understand what you mean,"
Yeah.
because it's a different language
Yeah.
than my generation was exposed to.
Isn't that crazy? I
I think
mean,
it's great.
crazy great
Yeah.
that the language changes.
That's why we are a living, breathing language and not a dead language like Latin, because
Yeah,
Latin doesn't change,
true.
and that's why they call it a dead language. English,
Constantly change.
constantly as we're exposed, new words get developed with technology. I told kids when I was young and in school, if somebody asked me to Google something, that would have meant to stare intently at it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know,
It's
the word didn't exist in that context.
I love that sort of thing. I can remember in high school because I would watch all the old TV shows on antenna TV. So, like, I grew up watching Andy Griffith and, like, watching Beverly Hillbillies and all the things and
Mhm.
different stuff like that on shows that we didn't we still to this day don't have cable or anything like that. We have Netflix and maybe,
Right.
like, stuff now, but in high school, we didn't even have internet until they had us have computers in class, and
When I took a computer programming class in college, um, we were learning to program the computer with its language, and our big project was to make the computer play solitaire.
oh my gosh.
I mean, but it was never just for your own usage. I mean, I still in high school had a manual typewriter.
I wish we had typewriters in high school, although I collect them, so I can't really say
Yeah,
I can't say,
it
but
was your interest there.
it was an
But
interest then.
yeah, it was a big deal because we had 1 week on an electric typewriter that we each went to so we'd know how to use it. And, so technology has just blossomed
It has.
through the years.
And it's changed so much. So, like, when I would watch these shows and I'd come in and I always tease that I always thought my life was a sitcom or, like, was, like, one of those TV
Yeah.
shows because I always thought I would do something throughout, like, the beginning of the morning that was really funny, but later on, it really was more funny because something else happened, and I'm like, "Nobody gets how funny this is but the audience in my head," is is
There you
how I
go.
kinda thought of my life. But even the words in the stories within in those TV shows were totally different than what they were talking about in class. And I always thought it was interesting to I always loved the older things, which by now, if you don't know that, it's I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah.
But I started to lately when I'm getting into I'm trying to be more disciplined in my writing. And I loved to write in high school anytime we had writing
Well,
assignments.
there's a top writing professor, last name's McDermott,
Hmm.
and one of the quotes I used for the dual credit English class that I was teaching, is she had a quote that said, reading is breathing in and writing is breathing out.
Oh, wow.
That if you want to be a better writer, read more. And if you want to be a better reader, write more.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like it goes hand in hand. I feel like we talked about earlier, my generation fills our heads so much with other people's thoughts that almost too much. It's different at a pace of a book than it is at a pace of a podcast like this or a YouTube channel or, even the radio, all the noise that comes on the radio. But I've noticed that with slowing down, which I've always been at a different pace than most people or my age, but as far as that doesn't mean I don't like YouTube or don't like podcasts or whatever it might be. But I've found myself, I got to a point where I just was like, why do I feel so overwhelmed constantly? And it was because I was filling my mind learning, but I wasn't applying it. So it's kind of like that breathing in.
You have to have the time to let it process.
Yeah. And so because it's so quick, you can learn about anything these days, which is amazing. But there is like that heart posture you have to realize you're getting into when it's just too much. And so I went to the bookstore the other day and I got dictionaries and because I realized how low my words are. Like sometimes I'm just like, man, I know there's a different word for this, or also I just got different things to help me with my writing
when
process.
I would get bored as a student and junior high, I would read an encyclopedia.
Oh my gosh.
Because, it was a little short.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have podcasts or YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So I'd just read an entry out of an encyclopedia entry. Or I'd think, I wonder about the Titanic. So I'd look it up.
Yeah. I've been doing that with the thesaurus. I always say that word so funny. In my mind, I think I'm going to say it great. And then when it comes out, I'm like, I don't know if that's really how I said that or not. It was close enough. You know what I'm talking about, sort of. But I got one of those. And halfly because one of my favorite writers was talking about how she wrote as well. And just having that physically on your table is always a good thing because, you reach for your phone or your laptop, and I don't really want to have to do that I like to write longhand.
Well, because I have, that English background, it bothers me so much with technology where they try to suggest a word or they put in a word and it's not what I wanted to say.
No.
And it's like, leave that alone. I know what I want to say.
Well, I've noticed that when I would write something for my blog or write something for just to put on, just to share with people, I realize I put it in and there's like all these squiggly lines. And then they said to put like Shakespeare in Word. And Word doesn't know how it's taught. Like it doesn't understand because it's a whole different style and a whole different aspect.
And I think in everything, I don't care if it's a blog or a YouTube video or a news headline or a book, you have to know the context. Because if you don't know the time period and the context, it's really easy to completely misunderstand. And I think that's one of the things with AI. It doesn't have a concept of context.
Right. That's true. And it just makes everybody the same when you read their writing. There's so many writers who I know would be really good if they would just put their personality into it, or like I would like it a little bit better or be more intrigued if they would just show themselves a little bit more. But they're more concerned about structure, which I get and I understand talking to an English teacher. Every time, it's so funny because every time I post something or whatever, I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, Mrs. Gohmann's gonna read this. Is this right? Did I put the comma in the right place? And like, it's so funny the things that you forget until you start using them. So I've become really disciplined in my writing. Now we've talked about reading is a very important thing to become a better writer, but what else makes a good writer?
And I think it's interesting because I always saw myself as a reader and a literature teacher, but I have had more people tell me that they learned how to write because of my class, but I never saw myself as a writing instructor.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I've always just thought, like, every time I think, I'm like, Mrs. Gohmann,
No,
yeah,
I taught
love
some
it.
writing
Yeah.
classes when I went to dual credit
Mhm,
because I had to teach, how to
mhm,
write for college, and then the second semester was literature.
mhm.
So they are so intricately tied together
Yeah.
that seeing myself as a literature instructor early on, I didn't even realize I was teaching writing.
Wow. It just happened, which I've told you before, but you made such an impact on my life, but I wanna know because you've read so much, and you've read a lot of you told a story before to me about throwing a book across the room.
Oh, because they had the science wrong,
Yeah.
and they hadn't built up, like, the context
Yeah.
that if this was gonna be a different planet and the rules were gonna be different, you have to lead the reader to those thoughts.
Mhm,
You can't just all of a sudden give an idea and not lead them to how you got that idea if
mhm,
it's so radically different.
mhm.
Yeah, and they had the science wrong, and it just made me so mad.
So get your facts right as
Or
well,
or
and
lead me if it's going to be pure imagination, you have and I've said this to students writing papers for
Mhm,
college, you have to bring me along with the ride.
mm,
I mean, I understand you develop the thought
mhm.
and you know what you're saying, but the reader may not.
Right,
And so you have to prep the reader for understanding too.
right. Do you stop reading if you don't like the book, or do
No.
you have to finish?
It'll haunt me if
Oh,
I don't
really?
finish the book. No matter how much I don't like it, I cannot forget the book because there's always that potential that maybe it got better.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to finish the book if I wanna be able to not obsess over it.
I get like that. I'm almost done with The Goldfinch. Fabulous book, but really long middle, right? And I really love the book. I love Donna Tartt's writing and her style. It's very long form. The sentences are a whole page, which I love.
When I was younger, I think I tried to get through Tolkien's The Two Towers 3
Oh, yeah.
times before I could, and then, of course, by the time I did, I loved it, but all the traveling and moving from place to place and what supplies they had, I kept thinking, "This is like Jules Verne." And I had to push my way through that to get to understanding why
Right.
there needed to be that much detail.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
needed to move characters
So
to the right
I
place.
like that kind of thing. I will naturally be drawn to that. My sister Ashley is like a very much quick story, like mystery stories, all this stuff.
It doesn't have to be quick for me,
I neither.
but there are times when it's just not the right time for
That's
that
true.
kind of story.
That is true. I do find myself, I'm like, I need a break, or especially from like the goldfinch. I think I have like 40 more pages, so not a whole lot. But I'm just like I needed a break, so I read something a little bit more quicker
Right.
and
I
I
tend to do that more with nonfiction.
mm,
Like, I'll go so far and then I'll put it down for a while because all the facts tend to start running together
yeah.
and I'm missing the overall point.
Oh yeah.
Now, with fiction, I have a tendency to read one book, finish it before I read anything else.
Mm,
But with nonfiction, I have a tendency to do it more in chunks.
which makes sense. That does make
Yeah,
sense.
there's some heavy nonfiction out there that
Right. Right. I picked up a book on psychology. And it's like you can't see for the listeners, but it's like this big, but it's small, like, it's a small packed book, and the writing is so small inside of it, but it's fascinating talking about where the first thought came from or trying to figure out where the first thought
yeah.
came from. It's fascinating stuff, but I'm like, I also wanna go to other places and read other things throughout that.
Well, I like when I read a fiction book
Mhm.
and then I recognize something I read from nonfiction that relates in that story. Or especially if I'm reading, say, like a Dan Brown book,
Mhm.
and I realize I've been to the country or the
Oh,
place where
yeah.
he's gone, and I recognize some of the landscape.
Yeah.
And I just really love that because my literature degree is comparative literature.
Mm.
So I am naturally drawing from across pieces of literature
Oh,
and
wow.
connecting them together.
Now see, that's fascinating to me. I found myself actually when I'm reading things, oh, I get their reference, even if it's from a completely different time
Yeah,
or trying because I remember reading this in a history book or reading this or whatever, and it's actually it sounds so silly, but I get so excited because I'm like, I came to that on my own. Like, I actually,
right,
like, just realized it on my own, which is I think that's a generational thing because of we could just hear whatever we need to hear and get it over with.
right.
But to actually that slow pace of I read this and now that I'm reading this next book, it's like, oh, this makes sense. Or and then it just it's a different kind of excitement and a different kind of accomplishment.
Right. Or you read a new book and you go, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been to that place. But I'll do the same thing with movies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be a movie and they'll do a scene and I'm going, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so fun. I wanted to ask, we've talked a lot about bridging that gap of generations, and you do it so naturally, which I appreciate so much to hear somebody that has so much interest and curiosity, but also just actually care about every generation. We talked about sitting at the feet of a lot of people that we can learn from. And, I've had the opportunity to sit in your classroom and to get to know
right.
you. Now I have to remind myself I don't have to call you Mrs. Gohmann. I almost asked you, I was like, do I have to call you Mrs. Gohmann? Because it just naturally kind of goes that way. But was there a person in your life that you look back and you just realize you really sat at their feet and you learned something from them?
Every single person you meet has something to teach you
Mm,
and something you can learn from them and they can learn from you.
yeah.
And that's always been my attitude. And I think that's probably why I've accepted people how they come to me.
That's a good one, accepting
Yeah,
people how they come, especially with this podcast. I want everybody to feel welcomed here, no matter what their background is
right.
and what it is. And one way I'm trying to do that is you say about learning from everybody, but is there like the, a piece of advice that you would give somebody that would come to you and say, I'm just having one of those days? I'm sure a lot of
Well, the
students have.
first thing, here we go back to the context.
Mhm.
I want to know what one of those days looks like.
Mhm.
And I want to start out listening.
Mm,
And I think we don't listen to understand as much as maybe we should because we're so busy. Like you said, we have so many voices to take the time just to listen before you give advice or before.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I think there needs to be a lot more conversations happening and listening
yeah,
and just being together without the pressure of outside things. Like, this is kind of an excuse for me to do that here,
yeah.
is to talk to people like this because you miss the conversations. I just wanna thank you so much for
Oh,
just coming on the podcast, but also making an impact on my life in ways that you don't know or understand fully, but you really did. And every time I write and every time I think about things, I think about how much I loved your class and how much I felt comfortable. And you also very much treated us like an adult, which was one of the things that I really admire about a teacher that can actually treat their student as
right.
an adult. And I have never felt anytime sitting in your class that I can ask a question or feel silly, even when we did speeches and that. And I told you this before, but what I'm doing now, it stems from your class and going to competitions to speak. If I never spoke in front of a classroom, I would have been a whole lot more nervous or like probably wouldn't have went. And that's how I got to school and how
Yeah.
I got scholarships. And it was an amazing experience to be your student, and now I get to know you outside of that, and I really appreciate that, and
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you.
I just love this so much. But this I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode because I sincerely did. I am incredibly inspired every single time someone walks into my studio and sits down. I am able to look in their eyes and I am welcomed into their story, and that is priceless. It is a great honor and also a great responsibility to think that when they said yes to come onto my podcast, that meant that they trusted me. They trusted me enough to allow me to help tell their story, and to me, that means the world. So thank you to my guest. If you'd like to connect with my guest, if they left any or mentioned any of social media or websites, it will be in the description box below, as well as on my Facebook and Instagram if you want to see what they look like. I have a portrait and a small little write-up along with anything they mentioned within this podcast. So I hope today that you have been inspired to look at your own life and to see that just living your life is important. But I want to inspire you as well to actually document your life. You have an importance in this world, and I want you to use your voice. So it doesn't have to look like 6 pages in a journal or being on a podcast. It can look like a line a day. If you'd like to connect with me, make sure you head over to hereinmytime.com. That is where I have a bi-weekly blog, as well as some of my portfolio work with photography, and where you can also contact me through email at hereinmytime@gmail.com, as well as follow me on Facebook and Instagram. This is at Here in My Time as well, here.inmytime for Instagram, and I have weekly content. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world. And until next week, bye-bye.